implementing new modules and features um, that work really well with the core HR benefits payroll modules, or the modules that we generally consider to be peripheral modules like absence management, time and labor, and so on. So this session is about a couple of those modules, specifically the absence management and time and labor, how customers who are already using PeopleSoft HCM, how they can make use of these applications that potentially they are not they haven't implemented but are already licensed for. And so we'll see how these modules work well together. Before we get into that, a quick introduction about who we are as an organization. PRMC Consulting is an Oracle partner and been operating since 2004, pretty much entirely focused on PeopleSoft applications. What that means is any single service that a PeopleSoft customer would want, starting with the implementation, assessment, support, upgrade, training, all these aspects are things that we offer and covered as part of our services. So feel free to check out our website, which has a lot more information in there. We are also a SOC 2 certified organization. PeopleSoft being an enterprise application, mostly hosts various personal information and sensitive data. So being a SOC 2 certified organization is critical for establishes our trust so that you can trust us with handling of your data with our mature processes that we follow in-house. We are also a Gartner recognized organization for our cloud expertise and experience, specifically running PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud infrastructure as well. Now, as we get closer to the end of the year, one of the things that always that we get a lot of interest for is trainings for PeopleSoft resources in your organizations. So we have a very busy next 3 months of trainings that are scheduled for public to register. So any of you could go to our website and check out our training classes and register. There is a QR code to our training calendar. But at a very high level, these are there's a list of topics that are listed out here that are being covered in our training classes as well. So feel free to check out our website for more information on this. The slides are going to be made available as part of these presentations as well. So feel free to download it as well. All right. With that, we'll get started with the core of the session, deep dive session today. So before I get into talking about how these modules work together, I wanted to talk about what is the driver for this presentation, right? Why are we talking about these two modules today? If you are a Kronos customer, if you have been using Kronos on-premise software, you would have already been aware of this, that UKG Group had announced end-of-life dates for Kronos application sometime towards the end of last year. So since that announcement, we have seen a significant interest in these modules of what PeopleSoft can offer. Specifically, customers who are already using either PeopleSoft HCM or finance application and are impacted by this, we have seen quite a bit of an interest in this area. In addition to that, if you're already using PeopleSoft HCM and currently don't have a specialized software for your time or scheduling, attendance functionalities, absence functionalities, then that's also another reason for us to be running this session. So essentially, the focus of the session today is highlighting what the system is capable of doing across time, attendance, and scheduling functionality, and how they all work together all the way up to payroll, right? That's the purpose of this session. It's not a live demo session. One key reason being these are fairly comprehensive modules, and having an end-to-end demo across these areas would be we would be able to do justice with few hours of time needed to do these demos. So since this being a 1 hour session, the idea is we want to cover all these areas, but want to highlight what are some of the newest things that have been released and what are some of the things that customers that are already using the modules may not even be aware of. So we want to focus on the highlights, how these things are working together, and where are some of the differentiations with other applications as well. So those are all the things that we are going to be covering today. So with that, we'll get started. So first, let's a quick brief about the absence management as a module. So Many customers, PeopleSoft HCM customers, might be aware there is a module for absence management specifically. One of the things that many customers that we interact with are probably not aware earlier is this module is already included as part of the North American payroll module licensing. So it's not a separate module that you need to purchase. If you're using the NA payroll module, either in US or Canada, then you are licensed to use the absence management module. It's bundled in as part of your already existing licenses, so feel free to make use of this module. Now, we will see a lot more about this module, but at a very high level, this module handles everything related to employee absences. It has self-service for employees to request and manage their absences, the time off that they need. And it has manager functions to make sure managers are able to review, approve requests, or able to submit requests on behalf of employees and participate in that process of managing the absences, and the administrative portion of it in terms of processing these absences and maintaining it to the system. Then time and labor. Time and labor is a standalone module. If you're interested in using this module, you would have to check to see if you are licensed for it. If not, you would have to purchase the license for this module, as it is licensed separately, unlike the absence module. So time and labor as a module covers everything from capturing the employee time, either through online or through a time clock device, and processing it, approving it, generating the payable time of it, and all the way up to sending it to payroll and integrating with your financial applications like project costing, expenses, and so forth. So we will see what sort of integrations are available as well. So it's a very comprehensive module covering all of that. And finally, the payroll module. Majority of the customers, if you're using PeopleSoft HCM, you're probably already using the NA payroll module. Now, the reason the sequence is this way is that if you end up choosing or end up using these modules together, the process and the data flow would be happening from absence to time and labor to NA payroll. That's the order in which the data and the process flows, which we will be covering in detail throughout this presentation. All right. So now let's sort of deep dive into the absence management module, each of the individual modules. I want to first talk about the capabilities before actually talking about the latest features and functionalities in the system. So first, as an employee, in terms of the self-service activities or the experience that the employee will get out of this module, it starts with the ability for them to request absences, any kind of absences, could be sick leave, vacation, PTO, any other vacation any other kinds of leaves that you offer to the employees can be configured to be requested via self-service. And if those absences require them to accrue and utilize time, then they have the ability to view the absence balances. They have the ability to forecast future balances, which is quite a powerful feature. Ability to forecast future balances, submit requests. They can themselves evaluate if they have balances down in the future to see if they're eligible before they submit it. And once it is submitted, follow through with the entire life cycle of getting it approved or canceling it if it is not needed, all of those. So this is the core crux of the functionality. Now, for customers, if you're not using absence management module, right now you're probably using, if you're using benefits, you're probably setting up leave plans and benefits, and you are basically capturing how much time an employee might have accrued or utilized or taken from a back-end perspective. So the benefits absence leave functionality does not provide much of the self-service capabilities associated with it. Also, it's very basic in terms of what it can handle. When it comes to absence management, the rules engine as part of absences is very comprehensive. So it can provide various functionalities like ability to cascade leaves, ability to cascade balances. You can set up more complex rules on how absences would work with standard absences, extended absences like FMLA and so forth. All those complicated scenarios are handled well with this particular absence management module. In addition to that, as I said, it has a support for requesting and managing extended absences like FMLA in US and few other countries where there are other long leave options. And there is the ability to request and manage schedules as well, which is fairly new. We'll see that in the session as well. Now, when it comes to managers, as I mentioned before, they participate in the process of managing employees' absences. They have full visibility into the employees' availability, what balances they have, so they can review and approve their leaves. In case an employee is not able to do it themselves, a manager can submit and process leaves as part of on behalf of the employees as well. They have ability to manage employee schedules and have access to reports and analytics to give better insights into the absences of their team members. So that's all part of the manager self-service function. And from an administrative side of things, essentially handling all the back-end activities associated with absences, they get access to all of those functionalities. Now, similar to that, we get into time and labor module. If you're not already using that module, it's also, I have broken it down by experience, starting with the employees. What do employees experience, and we'll go all the way through to the administrators. When it comes to time and labor as a module, again, has a very comprehensive offering for employees to be able to submit time, depending upon whether they are exempt or non-exempt employees. You can opt for elapsed or punch time sheets where they can manually enter time online in the PeopleSoft application. The system can, a time and labor module comes with a pre-built or a integration framework to connect with different time clocks. There are vendors that are certified by Oracle like Kava who provide time clocks that works well with PeopleSoft time and labor system. So it could, if you end up using a time clock device, then it can integrate with the employee timesheets as well. For organizations who prefer to use in-system time entry rather than time clock, there is also an ability to use a web clock, which is like an online clock functionality. We'll see that in the subsequent slides. So various ways to capture time via self-service. Managers can also enter and manage time on behalf of employees as well. There is the ability to capture time and associated with various tasks, projects, and so forth, where the time needs to be tracked against. Ability for employees to manage, take care of exceptions, any errors they may receive, any validation rules they might break. They have ability to address the exceptions as well. In addition to that, there is ability to see time getting processed through various stages. So we'll review those as well. In terms of managers, their primary role is to review and approve time. There is ability to do it when employee submits a time, what we would call as reported time, or ability to do it at a later stage where the time that has been submitted by the employees have been converted to a payable time. So they have the ability to do and manage the approvals at that stage as well. So you get to choose when you want managers to review and participate in the approval process. One of the most important aspects here that we will be seeing is how managers have like a full 360-degree visibility of an employee's time and absences and schedules. So all three can be combined into single view. So managers have a clear visibility of their workforce availability, right? They are using a functionality called Team Canada. So we'll go through all of that. And they are just like absence module, they do have access to various reports or analytics to make things get insights, more insights on how their workforce time and absences are getting processed in the system. And finally, there is just like the payroll module, there is quite a lot of functionalities for the time administrators. In many organizations, payroll team might be handling both time, absence, and payroll management tasks. So it would all the tasks are sort of interlinked. So time administrators have functionalities like the time and labor work center, absence work center to process the absences and time reported and approved all the way to payroll. So we will see how all of those things fit together as well. So at a very high level, what these two modules offer is essentially broken down into various users groups in your organization. Now let's see how some of those things fit together in terms of product. So before I do that, some of the things that happen on the back end that's not going to be easily shown via screenshots are essentially the integrations, how time and labor as a module, how employees' time gets integrated with various modules. Now, if you're using PeopleSoft Finance application, then there are pre-built integrations. You don't have to go and build these integrations. If you are using non-PeopleSoft application for your finances, then you have the integration that is partially built because the integration data out of PeopleSoft or into PeopleSoft is built, but the connectivity with the other system have to be handled by the customer. So depending upon which finance system you use, you either get a fully integrated or a partially integrated time and labor module. So time data, anything that is getting information that is getting tracked as part of time, obviously flows through payroll all the way to GL. In addition to that, if you're using project costing, then the project information can be brought over into the timesheet. So the time can be captured against projects and sent, and the estimates and actuals can actually be sent back to the project costing module. Ability to have time reporting codes as part of expenses module. So there is a one-way integration from time and labor to expense. And those are some of the important aspects when it comes to how time and labor as a module typically integrates with the other financial areas. Now, absences is sort of this standalone. Absences typically don't get integrated with your projects and other information. So there's not typically we don't book and track absences as part of different projects, etc. So that's standalone. This is predominantly for the time data integration with other modules. All right. All right. With that, let's go through some of the functionality in the system to say how, what is the latest user experience your employees and managers and administrators would get by using these modules. And especially, I want to highlight areas where all these modules are working together, right? That's the core essence of the session today. So this is to start with a dashboard of an employee. This is employee self-service, the latest PeopleSoft HCM application. When an employee goes to their time dashboard, how time and absence information are combined together into this dashboard. So let's go through this one by one. First, obviously, there is it's a fluid dashboard with tiles to access various functionalities. There is ability to access the timesheet from where they will be submitting their time and absences. So you can see there is, it clearly shows what is the scheduled time of the employees, which is coming from their work schedule and what time they have reported so far. So it gives them information whether they have already submitted time or not for a particular week. And the tile is a gateway to the timesheet, which we will look next. And this is the web clock functionality that I mentioned about, which is essentially like a single click ability to submit time. If the employee is just checking in, checking out, they can just use this in button or an out button or a lunch button that would appear on this tile to click to save the time. So they don't, if they don't have to do any task reporting, if the time is not associated with any project or anything, they could just book in and out, check in and out using a single click. If they have to check in and out against a particular task or a project, then they can go into the click the three dots button over there and submit the time there. But if it is a straightforward time entry, regular time, checking in and out, or with checking in and out of lunch breaks, etc., all those things will happen in a single click from their time dashboard. Now, this is essentially sort of the replacement of a time clock device. When it comes to time clock, obviously you will have swipe cards, access cards, or other forms to check in and out. But organizations who don't want to invest in that essentially have an ability for employees to check in and out. All right. So similar to a time clock functionality, but what we would call as a web clock, providing a single click feature for employees to report time. Then you can see that everywhere, pretty much when you see a tile nowadays, it's all informative tiles. Where possible, there is information shown on the tile that would prevent employee from going through into the tile to review some of the information. For example, the payable time example, where for the last period, which is in this example is a weekly period, how much time has been submitted, what has been calculated as an estimated gross. Very useful if the employee is an hourly employee and if they are submitting time. The basic necessary information is shown right on the tile itself. However, they can click through the tile and review the information in detail as well. There is the ability to set up quick fill. If an employee submits time in a particular format, have to book time against specific codes, have to use specific time reporting codes as part of their time entry, they could set up this quick fill feature that would allow them to easily populate the timesheet rather than having to do the manual entry every single time. Whenever an employee's time need attention, when they have exceptions that have originated out of the time processing, exceptions are accessible to the employee so that they can go and correct and resubmit the time. Now, at a very high level, another thing I wanted to call out is, as you can see here, the top two rows are essentially the tiles and functionalities that are related to time, and the bottom two rows are functionalities that are related to absences. And the last tile that you can see here is about schedule. Employees do have ability to request and manage schedule changes as well. So we will see each of these one by one, but a very high level at the time dashboard for employees and managers essentially bring together all of their time, absences, and schedule related function into a single place. All right, so that's the key thing I wanted to highlight here. All right, with that, this is a sample look of how a timesheet would look for an employee. I know organization, if you're already using PeopleSoft Time and Labor, around 3-4 years ago, close to 5 years now, when the timesheets became fluid, what we call the mobile-friendly timesheets. And I know there are still some organizations that are transitioning from the older version of timesheet to the newer timesheets. But for organizations that are completely new, they are seeing PeopleSoft, evaluating PeopleSoft Time and Labor for the first time, you are basically going to get a format like this where it's a mobile-friendly timesheets. In this example, it is a punch timesheet. So let's go through that layout quickly. One of the most important thing is there is ability, if an employee has multiple jobs, if they have multiple active employments, there is ability to track and report time individually by their jobs. So if an employee is on multiple jobs, the first thing they will do when they come to timesheet is to select a job for which they are reporting time. So the job title is at the top. That would make sure employees are seeing and submitting time for the right job. Then we are looking at the scheduled hours versus reported hours. There is a bar that is easily makes it visible and highlights to the employees. They're scheduled 40 hours, that's shown in red, and the reported is 7 hours, that's shown in green. If they are booking over, it would be in a different color. If they are booking under, you can easily notice the difference between hours. So there's a visible cues to highlight where they are booked short or booked more, etc. And there is ability to have elapsed or punch timesheet. Typically, we won't give option to the employees. Elapsed or punch is determined based on what kind of the timesheet would be right for that group, whether they are being exempt or non-exempt employees. The system would assign them a timesheet based on those rules. But there is ability for making this as an option as available for employees to choose as well. So in this example, what we are seeing is a punch timesheet option. A punch timesheet tracks time based on in punch, out punch, lunch, meal break. That whole section is entirely configurable. What punches you want to capture if it's a punch timesheet, or what fields you want to capture if it's a lapse timesheet. That whole section is configurable. And in this example, I basically have an in punch at 8:30. I went out for lunch at 12:15, came back at 1:15, and wrapped up my day at 4:30. So that's an example that is shown here. All right, let me, sorry, if your time is coming from any other external source, for example, if it's a time clock device, or if you book on the web clock that we saw earlier, that would already pre-populate here. So if there is time that is integrated, that is not manually entered on the timesheet, if it's coming from any other source, it will automatically be populated here for the employee to see. Okay. And there is ability for employees to apply the rules if there are any rules that are set up as part of validating time. Typically, public sector organizations hire and they have various combinations and rules, or more importantly, healthcare, that various rules comes into play. Certain groups of employees eligible for certain kinds of overtime. They might be able to book certain codes on certain days and so forth. Any rules that needs to be enforced can be validated by the employee as many times as they want to. They can save the timesheet before they finally have completed everything and are ready to submit it. So you see the buttons on the top there. apply rules, say for later submit, etc. There is ability to view the timesheet for a different period. In this example, employees on a weekly period, so it's only a weekly timesheet, but if they are bi-weekly, if they are monthly, depending upon what kind of periods they are used to report time, those options are available. It will default to whatever is the period that has been assigned to them, but they have option to change those things as well. There is ability to request an absence from the timesheet page. It's still requesting an absence is a task that is done as a standalone task. However, to make sure there is, when they are booking time, there is an ability for them to request absence. For example, if they have 4 days that they work and 1 day that they did not work, they have the option to initiate that absence request from the timesheet itself. So that request absence button does that. So we'll see that in the next screen how it works. There is ability to add comments, ability to add additional details. So if there are projects and tasks and various chart fields that need to be captured against the time, then the time details button would bring up the page that's configured for every individual customer requirements based on what chart fields you want to capture or what additional custom fields that you want to capture against the time. That's all configured as part of the time details page here. So this is a very simple overview of how a timesheet page looks in the latest version of PeopleSoft application, right? So how various information are brought onto the timesheet page, including absences. So we'll see more examples of different use cases as we go through. So first is, in this example, I have clicked on the request absence button to open up the absence request from the timesheet page. So what we are seeing here is the user is on a timesheet, but they're able to request the absence from the timesheet page. There is a start date, end date, and they choose a particular type of absence, and the absence balance shows up. The user is still on the timesheet page, but able to see and submit this information from the main page. So after they can see the absence, if the time off is happening in future, there is this check eligibility button. That's the window to initiate a future forecasting a future balance. For example, if right now my balance is, let's say, 80 hours, but I'm planning to take 3 weeks off in January or February of next year based on my start date and end date, the system can calculate my eligibility in future and provide me with information whether I'm eligible or not. The same check eligibility functionality, ability to forecast balance, is also available to manager when they are in the approval page, so that they can see whether the employees are eligible for a future request that they have submitted. However, it's not like system doesn't enforce or I would say limit the ability for employees to submit it. Like say if they're still not eligible for a particular balance in future, they can still go ahead and submit it, and manager has the authority to approve it. All those are configurable functionality in the system. Now this is an example where I'm showing a timesheet after a time has been booked, where the timesheet has both worked hours. In this case, there is an example: the employee worked on Sunday for an on-call, and then rest of the days the employee had different leave options. So they booked different kinds of leaves over for the rest of the week. So the timesheet brings in both worked time and the absences from the absence management module. So this is an example of how that data is coming into timesheet. Now for customers who are not using either of these modules, this might be a basic information that time and absences are shown here. But for customers who are using time and labor but not using absence management, this would be new, where you are familiar with worker time being captured on timesheet, but absences, whatever kinds of absences that you offer as part of your benefits leave plan, all those absences can be captured as part of absences module and brought over into timesheet and taken to payroll. So that whole circle works. And this is the starting point of it. When you have submitted an absence, absences flow through timesheet is the example that is shown here. Now this is a slightly different view, essentially a calendar view for employees, and typically shown for the period for which the payroll is processed. So in this example, let's say we have an employee who is on a bi-weekly pay period for the period of October 8 to October 21. The same employee that we saw earlier, they have scheduled 80 hours scheduled. They have reported 65 hours. We are on the reported time tab that is shown here. And you can see in the example where on the October 17th, there is a regular work hours of 8 hours. There is a sick of 2 hours. So what it means is they have a partial absence on that day. So essentially, it is broken down by individual day. Whatever time they have reported, either a part of worked time or part of absences, all brought into a single view for them to see what is their time submission for that particular period. In this case, a bi-weekly period. Now, what they are seeing is reported time. The same option is available if you see that there's a payable time tab as well, where we can see how the payable time got calculated as well. I think I have a screenshot later that shows how payable time is calculated for this example. All right. Now, this is a more detailed view of an absence request for an employee. How an employee wants to submit a new absence request, how does that absence request page looks? Earlier we saw if they try to submit an absence from the timesheet page, how it looks. But if they're trying to submit absence as a standalone item, if they go to the time dashboard and are clicking to submit the time, this shows how that information is shown to the employees. So for example, at the top, there is the absence history tab that shows the 3 recent absences that were already submitted and their statuses. So this employee has vacation, sick, and vacation on different days. All of them have been approved. If it has been cancelled or it's still pending approval, an employee would be able to see the history of absences at the top in here, the most recent 3 items. And then all of their balances, if depending upon what leave plans you offer, various leave plans, all of their current balances are shown on the right-hand side window over there, which is used to show any related information, but this comes pre-configured to show the current absence balances for all the leave plans that employee is eligible for. It also shows the holiday calendar where employees can see what are the upcoming holidays. Again, looks like it's going to be showing for based on whatever is the balances they have for the rest of the year. It's going to show that information as well. And the center section over here in the middle is where the employees are able to create and submit an absence request, which is the window that we saw on the timesheet page earlier. So essentially, they can choose a start date, an end date, what type of absence they can see the balance, whether it is choose whether it is a partial day or full day, check their eligibility if it's a future absence, add any other additional information they want to add, provide any comments and add attachments, all that in that window. Now, the reason I'm specifically showing this page is because this is a very recent functionality where this is the enhanced version of absence request functionality where employees are able to see all this information related to absence in one place. They are able to see the absence balances, they are able to see the absence history, holiday calendar, all that combined into a single view. So this is a fairly recent functionality. So if your organization already using absence management, you may not be using this one because it came out fairly recently. So this is where this is how the enhanced version of absence request looks like. So just wanted to call that out. All right, we spoke about current balance, forecast balance, and so forth. Now, this is also what is shown here is also a fairly new feature that came out in the recent images where the absence balances available shown to employees on the self-service. In the previous page, we saw on the right-hand side, the balances is shown as a summary, a sick balance of 4 hours, a vacation balance of 160 hours. But the broken down view, when they go to see the absence balances, is where they're able to see a full history of their balances and how they came up to that balance. For example, this employee has 160 hours as part of their current balance as of 2nd October. And the history section at the bottom shows how the balance was calculated. In this case, it's broken down by month, but they do have the ability to see the balances broken down by pay period as well. So every pay period, what was their opening balance, what was their earned balance, how much was taken, if there were any adjustments done, all that information is provided in a very simple summary view, so that they have full visibility into how they came to have that balance of 160 hours. Another recent functionality that came out. So if you are already using absence management, the new enhanced absence request page and the absence balance page, these are some of the things that you can selectively adopt into your application as well, right? All right. So another fairly new feature that came out is self-service capability for managing the schedules. So for example, we saw a tile that's on the time dashboard for managing requesting schedule changes. There are two functionality for employees, two activities that employees can do, starting with either they can give up their shift that has been scheduled for them, so that the manager can reassign it to another person, or they can trade a shift where you can choose another person as part of your team to reassign it to, and they need to accept that change. So employees can trigger either of those things. This is how the page looks like, where they would go and do that activity. So trading a shift, they would choose what day they are trying to trade, and who are the team members that they have as options to do the trade with. It shows uh, that window, though it's pretty simple but very informative. As you can see here, it shows various employees in their team and shows them who is an ideal match based on their schedule, who is a good match, and who is not available if they already have time that is planned, time off that is planned on that day, who they may not be even available. So provides that information so that employee can make a judgment call on who they can trade with. And of course, there is a approval process where the employee selector needs to approve, or in terms of giving up a shift, the manager needs to approve. So there is the ability to do request and manage schedule changes as well. Another functionality that is relatively new for the time and labor and absence module. And the reason I'm touching upon schedules specifically is schedules are uh, highly important for both these areas, right? Time and absences, especially for non-exempt employees, where they have their work hours could vary, their schedules could vary. Then there is a need to manage the schedules actively in the system. Now, time rules look up to schedules and their time that based on their schedule and the worked hours, various kinds of times and overtimes and other shift times, etc. Premiums get calculated. When it comes to absences, their accrual is depending upon their schedule, how much time they are booking versus the schedule, how much time off they are booking. All those things are driven by the schedule. So there is earlier, there used to be ability for administrators to create schedule assigned to employees and managers to be able to manage schedule. This ability is fairly recent functionality where there's now capability for employees to request and manage their schedules as well, right? So just choosing the action, choosing the date, and choosing the target person to submit this request. All right. Now, I briefly mentioned earlier about the time calendar functionality, which essentially sort of combines all these three things, right? There is time, there is absence, there is schedule. And this is a manager functionality where managers have access to view the calendar for their team, including both direct or indirect reports. They have the option to choose just see it for their direct reports or include their indirect reports as well, depending upon how big your organization is. And for a period, weekly by weekly period, you could see the calendars, how the work calendar looks like. It's essentially workforce availability sort of a view where you can clearly see the scheduled hours of the employees, especially if they're not on a standard 40 schedules, if they're working different days of the week, you can easily see what is the scheduled hours for the week versus if anybody has booked a time off, And the legend on the right-hand side shows schedule, holiday, birthday, work anniversary, the four information brought into the single view for managers to see. Another relatively recent functionality. So if you're already using these modules and currently haven't deployed these new features like time calendar or schedule changes, all these can be selectively adopted into your implementation as well. Right. Doing a quick time check. I think we're getting into the last 15 minutes. So I'm trying to rush up a little bit. All right. I think this is getting close to towards the end of it, where we earlier spoke earlier I discussed about the timesheet where the time absence information are brought in, consolidated for employees to see and managers to see. Now, the time that is being submitted by the employees, approved by the managers, then goes through the administration process that determines what time reporting codes to which they need to be assigned to, with options like regular time, overtime, double overtime, triple overtime, various things, depending upon different uh, payments that need to be associated with the time. We call it as a payable time. So once the time administration runs and generates the processes the time that has been reported by the employee, then it's available for ready for to be sent to payroll. We call that as a payable time. And that payable time once again combines both the absences and work hours. So absence is coming from the absence management module and the work hours is coming from the time and labor module. And here is an example where when we look at a payable time for a particular period, there is regular time that shows 102 hours for that particular period of, I think, 3 weeks in this case, looks like. And there is an estimated gross based on the employee's hourly rate. And then there is paid vacation. So all different kinds of absences, time reporting codes, everything would be summarized in this view. There is both a summary view and a detailed view for both employees and managers to see. As I mentioned before, there is ability to have workflow approvals on the time reported or workflow approvals on the time that is to be paid, payable time approval. So organizations have an option to choose between these two options. All right. Now, one thing when we typically talk about the time and the absence and payroll module working together, when we have these demos, one thing that we constantly ask upon, typically, as I said before, it is the payroll team that generally gets involved in managing all these areas, absence, time, and payroll. So we are always we have questions around how the processing happens. What is the order in which things happen over a particular pay period? For example, let's say the pay period is going to be about to be processed for payments for the payroll function. How does absence time and payroll fit together when it comes to processing? So things typically starts with, let's say, at the end of the period, you lock down your timesheet where time has been already entered. You have a period where you have let people enter timesheet. So start with timesheet lockdown. Run the time admin process to make sure all the time that has been submitted is processed and the payable time is created. If you're using leave donation functionality, just like schedule create, there is ability to donate leave. There is ability to process extended leave. So if you're using those features, then those processes will need to be run. And then the absence calculation functionalities will have to be run. So time is getting calculated, absence is getting calculated. Any exception in these areas will need to be resolved. Exceptions could be warnings that are allowable exceptions, or errors that need to be fixed before that particular time can be processed. So the exception management needs to happen. Correct any errors and recalculate. So first, the absence calendar will need to be finalized. So there is a process to do that where the submitted absences have been calculated, exceptions have been managed, and the absence calendar is finalized. And then once the absence calendar is finalized, then the employees via self-service will be able to see any accrual, what is their latest accrual for that period, how many leaves they have taken, how many has been adjusted, and the final balance. Once the absence calc is finalized, the data is available for employees to see it in the self-service. Their balance would be updated for that new period. Make sure the absence data has flowed through to time and labor. Then essentially you create your pay sheets in the payroll module. and load the data that's from the time and labor to payroll. So essentially, absence data have already flown into time and labor. Time data has been generated as well. If there are any approvals, then approval needs to happen first, and then that the entire consolidated time and absence information flows from time and labor onto the payroll side of things. And then once it's loaded to pay sheets, then it goes through calcs and reviews and finalization and the confirmation of pay itself. So everything happens at that stage in the payroll module. And eventually after payroll, post payroll tasks like GL, etc., and integration to other systems happen. So this from specifically from time and absence point of view, this describes how the data flows from absence time to payroll. Okay. And once you're done with it, you can release your timesheet lockdown so that the time is open now for editing. If there is any corrections that can happen, it will be processed as retros, or if there is open for new period where time entries can continue to happen as well. Okay. So I think that proceed with regular payroll confirmation task, that pretty much completes it. Now, all these three modules deals with lots of data, right? So there is absences, lots of absence data, lots of time data, and lots of payroll data. Now, throughout this conference, you will see a lot of sessions around various data visualization, insights, dashboards available as part of PeopleSoft application. If you are using any on tools version before 860, anything between 857 and 859, you would be using Kibana software for your data visualization. If it's 860, you have the Open Search software for data visualizations. Regardless of the software, there is a lot of delivered dashboard insights available for all these three modules. So for the time and labor module, as typically it's what we would call as operational dashboards that are available to the payroll team to see the insights into reported time, insights into payable time, how the reported time and payable time are trending, all that information, what needs approval, etc., are all available part of the data visualization. When it comes to the absence management module, there is operational dashboards for managers and administrators to see what kind of absences have been processed, how the absences has been trending, and so forth. There's quite a lot of useful visualization for both these modules. And specifically for payroll module, even if you're not using these new modules, payroll module has very powerful data visualization, cost analysis, payroll trends, etc. as well. Now, there are definitely separate sessions to go into deep dive into each of this visualization or how to deploy it, etc. But this is at a very high level. All these three modules have delivered data visualizations using either Kibana or Open Search framework for users to make use of. All this, once again, are part of the delivered PeopleSoft functionality. So no additional licenses, no additional software implementations or servers needed. You make use of this using your existing application, existing data, existing servers and tool set. Okay, so just wanted to call that out here. All right, I think that with that we have reached the end of the planned topics that I wanted to cover. So we'll see if there are any questions. Let me see. I think there is a QA. There is one item. Any suggestions on how to integrate UKG timesheets into PeopleSoft? Yes. So I think there are various options to do that, not just UKG. It could be any different kinds of timesheets, right? So whichever software you're using. So when it comes to PeopleSoft time and labor or any time system, there are two different aspects to it, right? One is everything that happens on the front end, which is around time collection. And the other is the time administration, processing of the time itself. Now, if your time sheets are primarily used for time collection, and you could either bring it and load it into PeopleSoft and do the time administration there, meaning your reported time gets converted to payable time in PeopleSoft. What that means is your time rules will run in PeopleSoft, exceptions, etc., will be handled in PeopleSoft, and then sent to payroll. That is one option. But if you're in this case, let's say UKG, if you're already using timesheets and the time rules are applied there, you already have generated the final payable time, like you know what codes, how many hours, what you are going to pay the employee for. then that data would directly flow into your payroll system rather than it doesn't have to go through the time and labor system. So depending upon what you currently use in UKG, that would determine where that data would come into PeopleSoft. Okay, so both those options are available. All right, we have few more minutes. If there are any specific questions, I can answer those. If not, we can wrap up, and all of you have a good rest of the conference. Enjoy the other sessions of the conference. So let me quickly check if there are any other questions. So live, that's completed. All right, that's all the questions topics I had to cover. It looks like there are no further questions, so we'll wrap it up. And all of you have a great rest of the conference, and hopefully see you in another session today.
Thank you so much, Logesh. Thank you to everyone for joining the session. Have a good day.
All right, thank you very much. Bye-bye.